Okay, welcome to the next lesson about Parmenides. We spoke about Heraclitus. Now, we've already contrasted the two. If you watch that video, you will see that Parmenides is the opposite of Heraclitus. He doesn't believe that change is possible. The world of change and becoming is illogical, irrational, and an illusion for Parmenides. Therefore, our senses, our eyes, our ears, our taste, our sense perception is unreliable. Now that's very important because the previous three philosophers, Thales, Anaximander and Heraclitus, were all empiricists in some way. They used the inductive method, which means they looked at the world, they tested their ideas about the world, and if the world acted how they thought it would act, then it was some kind of proof, not 100% proof, but it was a good reason to believe that maybe their model was correct. This is known as the scientific method, or the inductive method, or the empirical method. But Parmenides claims that that's not the method we should be using. We should be using a deductive method. He was an extreme rationalist, which means that he doesn't believe the external world is necessary. Perception of the external world is not necessary to understand it. We can actually understand the entire world through deduction, not through induction, but through deduction. Now, Pythagoras is another example of someone who is very much a fan of the deductive method. And mathematics is a subject which uses the deductive method. The inductive method is favoured by science. And they are different because mathematical proofs, when somebody creates a mathematical proof, they don't use anything in the external world to prove something from mathematics. You don't do an experiment. Whereas in science, an experiment is necessary, and there is no such thing as proof in science using this method. You just say that one model is perhaps more likely to be correct than another one which has been shown to be definitely incorrect. So he just used his mind and logic to come up with the following arguments. Now here are some examples of his arguments. Empty space is nothing. Nothing is non-being. Non-being can't exist. Yeah, and so therefore empty space cannot exist. He didn't believe there was any empty space between the objects. It's simply impossible, and therefore movement, which requires empty space, is also impossible. Okay, another argument of his. Something cannot come from nothing. He believes it's impossible for something to come from nothing. This is still a very common idea, and I think we all agree with Parmenides here, even though we may disagree with his conclusions. It's certainly a scientific principle, perhaps it's true, perhaps it's not, but that something cannot come from nothing. I think nowadays with quantum mechanics, a lot of quantum theorists, theoretical scientists, theoretical physicists, I should say, they would say that something can come from nothing, that you have virtual particles that appear out of the void and go back into the void, and this reminds me of very much of Anaximander, that definite qualities come from this indefinite place. So they may claim that something can come from nothing. What do you think? Is it possible for something to come from nothing, or is it impossible? He also states that something cannot go to nothing. It can't just disappear out of existence. So this means that birth is impossible, death is impossible, and the whole coming to be and passing away is just an illusion. This is the world of becoming. It's just an illusion. All this world of change is simply an illusion. So his conclusions are, there are no separate things. There's no empty space. There can be no separate things. There's no many. There's only the one. Remember that Heraclitus said that even the one splits into the two, and they fight against each other. So he was very much a fan of the many. He believed that everything had multiple forms and that they were constantly changing. Parmenides says no, there's only one form for eternity. So for him, that everything is connected. There's no differentiation of substance because everything is connected. And so the universe just appears as a one-body universe, a big chunk that's the same forever. Now, perhaps that sounds a bit funny, but as I pointed out in the last video, it has many similarities to relativity theory, and a very famous philosopher, Karl Popper, spoke to Einstein, and he made fun of him, and he called him Parmenides, because of Einstein's claim that time is similar to space, and that time and space, he believed the universe was like a big block, and that nothing can change this block. This is like determinism, the fact that once the whole universe has already been predetermined, and it's a certain shape and a certain size, and certain things happen, and that's the universe. You can't change it. Think about how how relativity deals with space, empty space. It claims that empty space can be curved. Now, that seems very strange to me, because I can't possibly imagine empty space being curved. I'm sure that I'm just misunderstanding this theory, but I cannot understand empty space having a property like curvature. I can understand a table being curved or a piece of metal being curved, but I can't understand something empty. Now, this curvature means that in Einstein's universe, there isn't really motion. Things just follow the curvature of space and time. And so there's not really motion in the classical sense. And in this way, he's quite close to Parmenides. But the reason Popper was calling him Parmenides is because Parmenides believes in the B theory of time, which is where past and future are already there, they already exist, and they're unchangeable. There is no real change in the universe. Karl Popper, on the other hand, was someone who believed in the A theory of time. He believed that the present moment was the only moment which existed, and the future, therefore, is indefinite. It's not certain what will happen in the future. So he was critical of Einstein for this reason. A few more words about Parmenides. You maybe have heard the story about Achilles and the tortoise. This was one of Parmenides' students, Zeno, and Zeno wanted to show that his teacher, Parmenides, was correct, and that movement was illogical. So I'm sure you all know the story that Achilles starts first, and the tortoise the tortoise starts first, and Achilles will only get half the distance, and then half the distance, and then half the distance, an infinite number of times, so he will never pass the tortoise. This is another argument, as I say, in favour of Parmenides. But I really want to show I want to really emphasise that this is all from the work of logic. It's not from the world of the senses, from the scientific method. And I believe that Einstein is another example of this. His theory is based on the deductive method. It's based on thought experiments, which are not empirical experiments. Thought experiments are experiments in the mind. You don't need an empirical world to do a thought experiment. So I would say that when Popper called him Parmenides, he was also thinking about this, that Einstein favours the deductive method, not the inductive method. So I'm sure maybe you disagree with me here. Please write under the lesson if you think that there is some merit to Einstein's theories. I'm sure that lots of you do. Please put your ideas under the video. Something which is very interesting for me. So I hope that's clear about Parmenides. But if you want to speak about whether you believe that empty space is an illusion or whether movement is impossible, if you want to speak about the B theory of time or the A theory of time, do you believe that the present moment is the only real moment, or do you believe that past and future are there and they have always, they're always true, they're always real in some description? So the universe is like a block and it doesn't change. Okay, thanks for watching, and please come to the next class, which will be about Empedocles, I think, and we'll come back to Heraclitus. Okay, thanks very much for watching.